For Louisiana versus all y'all, somebody cue up the little breaking news report, the little whatever, because we have some unexpected, reconvening here this Friday afternoon. Now, officially, we said that we would chat some more next week about some stock riser candidates, but as the street poet Clifford Tip Harris was paraphrased in the radio edits, big things popping with Dakorien Moore's decommitment from LSU late Thursday night. So, Jarrett Roser here with Sam Spiegelman to kind of break down all of that and what's ahead now for LSU in that 2025 class. Sam, you just saw Dakorien at state track a couple weeks ago out in Texas. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to him out there. I wasn't overly surprised by the news. It seemed like there'd been some kind of trending this direction as he, when we were out there in Orlando with Flo, with Bryce Underwood and everyone. He was at Ohio State on a visit. He was just or is at Oregon for a visit right now. And so he'd been kind of exploring some options. But what was your takeaway seeing his post Thursday night that he's back on the open market?
Yeah, I'm not surprised one bit. Honestly, last December, when Dakorien helped Duncanville to a second consecutive state championship at AT&T, there was already some buzz in the air, some whispers that this commitment to LSU had an expiration date on it for some time, and obviously Frank Wilson, Cortez Hankton, Brian Kelly, all involved in trying to keep Dakorien committed as long as possible with the hope of securing his signature. But it just felt like with the way things unfolded, especially this offseason, he's been to Oregon, he's been to Ohio State, and he's been to Texas. It just seemed like this like I said, this commitment to LSU had an expiration date. I believe that he is not going to visit Oregon this weekend anymore. But I do think that Oregon is very much in the picture. I think the obvious team to pinpoint to Dakorien is Texas. Texas has had a ton of success recruiting Duncanville High School since Coach Sark and Coach Banks, the area recruiter, and Coach Jackson, the new wide receiver coach, has been recruiting Dakorien for some time. But under Sark, the Duncanville Stars, the Colin Simmons of the world, the Alex Januaries of the world have made their way to Austin. Dakorien has been a top target for the Longhorns. They were in the mix for his commitment last August before he committed to LSU. That has not changed whatsoever. I do think that Oregon, people are kind of discounting Oregon maybe because he's not visiting this particular weekend. But, when I saw him in January, February, Dakorien had noted to me that Oregon was probably pushing the hardest, and that includes harder than even LSU at the time. And you have to know that the Ducks and Dan Lanning just tabbed Rashad Samples to be their new assistant and work with the running backs. And Rashad is the son of Duncanville head coach. Then you talk about Ohio State, which is coming off that visit that you mentioned while y'all were at OT7. Ohio State has come on very strong with Dakorien Moore since this spring in particular. Obviously, they, like LSU, they have a rich history of churning out these all-world wide receivers, and Brian Hartline is one of, if not the best in the business at wide receiver coach. And I think that it's now a race between those three teams. And I think it's about to be, I don't think we're going to have to wait too long for a decision, because I'm pretty sure his June is going to be pretty busy, and you might get a verdict not too far after that.
We obviously both previously worked with Rivals. You're back doing some work with Rivals now. And one of the little features that they have done in recent years is that sting factor when a guy decommits or flips or whatnot. I won't ask you to put a number on it in terms of the sting factor for LSU, but look, he's decommitted from LSU, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't suck from a standpoint of, he wasn't that good anyway. He's good. He is an extremely talented young athlete who I think is going to be great wherever he goes. But in the context of kind of LSU seeming somewhat prepared that this was a direction it was heading, knowing where LSU is with its recruitment of the position overall, man-child already on board, and some other guys that I think they're decently positioned with. How do you view to some degree, how would you contextualize the sting factor of Dakorien Moore's decommitment from LSU?
Yeah, well, not to jump too far ahead, and we'll talk about some of those other targets on their board where LSU, Coach Hankton and Coach Kelly turned to at the position. But like you said, they have man-child Teron Francis, a four-star wide receiver from Edna Carr, who you just saw the other day, and he was putting on a show. I think he's a guy that's dripping with potential and has been since he was a freshman at Carr, playing as a freshman, which is very rare, with size, speed, and just a heavy dosage of physicality. And he's already committed. But as far as sting factor, right now, I would say it's a 10 out of 10. I've said on multiple different media hits over the last couple of months since he's been committed, and even before, Dakorien is one of the best wide receivers I have seen up close and
Yeah.
personal. And you know the list that you and I have both seen, and it always starts with Devontae Smith for me, and Jamar Chase, and we've seen Justin Jefferson in high school, and I've seen some great ones out here in Texas, and that includes Dakorien Moore. And I think he's one of those impact guys that's going to go to a program, and it's not going to take too long for him to make his impact. I think what he does, he dominates at the highest level of high school football. He's dominated in multiple settings, whether it's camps, 7-on-7, real life games, the games that have the highest at stake. And he doesn't really blink. And I think he goes about it with a incredible work ethic and incredible attitude. So I don't think that there's a lot of Dakorien Moores in this class where you can say that this doesn't sting. Having said that, LSU has a rich history of not only evaluating and recruiting elite receivers, but developing them. And not only do they have a great stable currently on their roster, but I think that the way this class unfolds will ultimately be the real determining factor and what the real sting factor is. Because, and we'll talk about these guys in a minute, if you put together a class with 3 or 4 of these other names, you might not have the Dakorien Moore, but you get one of those, prolific groups of talent, which currently they're trotting out right now with Chris Hilton and Kyron Lacey and Aaron Anderson, and it could look all right. I promise you that, LSU fans.
Yeah, I know two of the names that are already kind of popping out there as guys to watch because they are top level national guys who are planning to be on campus at LSU in just a couple of weeks here. Khalil Lockett, a guy who I've seen a ton of on the 7-on-7 circuit the past couple of years, and I feel like LSU has been well positioned with for a while. And then Jamie French, a guy I saw out there at OT7 just a couple of weeks ago, obviously a fantastic young athlete and pass catcher. But I know you have a list of a few others to kind of monitor as well that maybe aren't as top of mind just yet for LSU fans, but are definitely going to be worth watching here in the next month and a half as things really kick up this summer.
Yeah, between those two, I definitely implore LSU fans keep an eye on Khalil Lockett. Coach Hankton was one of the early offers for Khalil, who is now obviously since blown up and is a 5-star wide receiver at a SACC. And I think it's going to come down to LSU and whoever else in the end. And I think LSU will have a puncher's chance in that one for sure. He's been high on their board for a while. But some other names sticking in the state of Texas. Andrew Marsh is a 4-star wide receiver who's been to Baton Rouge, a bunch, camp for Coach Hankton last year. Kind of fits that wide receiver 1 mold as a 6 foot, 6'1.5", 187-pound wide receiver that can play on the outside and stretch the field vertically. You can go over to South Florida, Cortez Mills, a receiver that Coach Hankton has gone and seen, and very high on LSU's board. I think at this point in the cycle might be leaning toward Miami, Nebraska, also very much involved in that recruitment. And then also out to the Peach State, where you obviously know that Coach Hankton spent a lot of time when he was at Georgia. C.J. Wiley from Milton is the son of a former LSU defensive end, Chuck Wiley. LSU might be able to turn the heat up on him, but this is LSU, and obviously when it comes to wide receiver talent, you don't always have to leave the state. You know that Teron Francis is committed. I think he's a pretty easy lock to sign with LSU when it's all said and done. What about staying on the West Bank? Archbishop Shaw, Jacob Washington is. I think him and Teron Francis are toe and toe for who's going to be wide receiver 1 in Louisiana this year. Jacob Washington is 6'2", 180 pounds, but can stretch the field vertically. Has fantastic speed as he showed at track this year. He's shown in the camp settings as well, and I think he's bound to have a really strong senior season for Coach Tierney and the Eagles. And then Philip Wright over at Destrehan. We know he's an all-world track star, picked up an LSU offer this spring. Both Coach Hankton and Frank Wilson were right next to you, Jared, on Wednesday at Wildcat Stadium. I could imagine they might not have to look too far if they want to replace Dakorien Moore speed with maybe Philip Wright speed.
Yeah, all those guys obviously have a lot of tools to them. You kind of wrap up with Philly and that world class track speed, but I is it safe to say from our perspectives that as much as we're several months away from signing day, that nothing's ever done in recruiting, but Dakorien Moore seems pretty unlikely to end up in purple and gold on signing day.
Yeah, you can never rule out anything. You definitely have. I've definitely been reminded of that more and more in the NIL era, the past couple of years. But based on the intel, how it's fluctuated, like I said, last December, you already heard rumors that it would be difficult for LSU to hold on through the end. And then after he took that visit to Ohio State, he said he had a Final Four at that point already. You kind of heard that of that Final Four, LSU might be on the outside looking in of that group. So I think it's a little bit unlikely. You have to remember he's a Dallas area kid. That's where his family is. LSU is not too far away. Texas might be the closest fit for him and his family. But big schools like Ohio State and Oregon I think that they're very much alive in this race.
There you go. Sam Spiegelman on a Friday, breaking it all down, giving us about a half a dozen potential pivot options. Or I say pivot, some of these guys were very much in play even before Thursday's news, but a lot of options still on the board for Cortez Hankton, Brian Kelly and company with that LSU Tigers receiving room. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to a few minutes of Recruit That Boot on Louisiana versus All Y'all. He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. Y'all have a good one.